Alright, Mr. Maya's ESC review, terms 61 through 80, Spanish-American War. War began when war fever spread across America after the USS Maine was destroyed on February 15, 1898. Congress declared war on Spain on April 20, 1898, and we began fighting in the Philippines and Caribbean. On August 12, 1898, the Treaty of Paris ended the war, giving the U.S. Cuba, Guam, the Philippines, and Puerto Rico. Alright, the Teller Amendment. Amendment passed by Congress when war was declared on Spain. This amendment stated that the U.S. had no intention of taking over Cuba, aimed to please the anti-imperialists. Florida's role in the Spanish-American War. At the beginning of the Spanish-American War, Florida was home to many Cuban refugees. When war was declared on Spain, the U.S. Army began building military bases in Florida, especially in and around Tampa. Anti-imperialists formed the Anti-Imperialist League of America. The league included many prominent Americans, including Grover Cleveland and Andrew Carnegie. This league was against imperialism and strongly believed that it was wrong for the U.S. to rule others without their consent. The Platt Amendment. Amendment was passed in 1900 and gave Cuba back to the Cubans with certain stipulations. The stipulations were that Cuba could not sign treaties limiting independence, they couldn't go into debt, and the U.S. could intervene at any time. Open door policy. John Hay's foreign policy for dealing with the trade in China. It was implemented to keep European powers from closing off China to the U.S. The main reason for its implementation was the U.S. belief that closing an area to the U.S. threatened our survival. Alright, the Treaty of Portsmouth. Peace negotiations between U.S., Russia, and Japan. Russia had attacked Japan and Japan won, but lost many men and had no money left. Japan approached the U.S. asking them to conduct peace talks. 3 countries met in Portsmouth, New Hampshire and reached an agreement. This negotiation won Teddy Roosevelt the 1906 Nobel Peace Prize.
Go ahead.
Alright, the Panama Canal. Canal opened August 15, 1914 and gave ships an easy passage from the Atlantic to the Pacific Ocean. Canal was the original idea of France, but due to a lack of men and money, sold it to the U.S. The U.S. spent $380 million on the canal and paid Panama $250,000 in annual rent. Big Stick. Teddy Roosevelt's foreign policy of speak safely and carry a big stick followed the idea of try diplomacy first and use force if it fails. Alright, Roosevelt Corollary. Added to the Monroe Doctrine and said that if any European power tried to intervene in Latin America, the U.S. would act as the world's police and help defend them. World War I. World War I began on January 28, 1914. It was fought mostly in Europe between a group known as the Allies. The Allies were the United Kingdom, France, and Russia, and they fought against Germany and Austria-Hungary. The Allies were eventually joined by Italy, Japan, and the United States. As the war finished, the German, Russian, and Austro-Hungarian empires ceased to exist. The Treaty of Versailles was signed at the end of the war. Lusitania was a British liner that was sunk by a German U-boat about a year after the start of World War I. Many Americans on board died, and this incident played a large role in turning Americans against the Central Powers and contributed to the United States' eventual involvement in the war. The Sussex Pledge was a promise to the United States by Germany in 1916. They promised that they would not sink American ships without warning because they were scared the United States would enter the war, and they didn't want to lose against them. The Zimmermann telegram was a telegram that was intercepted from the German foreign minister to Mexico, promising the return of land if they allied with Germany against the United States. The telegram was printed in the U.S. newspapers and contributed to the U.S. entering the war. The Selective Service Act. The Selective Service Act authorized the federal government to raise a national army for the American entry into World War I by enlisting citizens. The Selective Service makes it mandatory for men to register for the service when they reach the age of 18. Alright, African Americans in World War I. African Americans were both affected by and had a large impact on World War I. African Americans in the North faced better job opportunities and left their manual labor jobs for industrial work. 400,000 African Americans served in the armed forces. Alright, the War Industries Board. The War Industries Board oversaw and managed the purchase of war supplies. It was established on July 28, 1917. The board encouraged companies to use mass production techniques to increase sales revenue. CPAC. The committee was created by Woodrow Wilson in 1917. Its purpose was to increase American support and participation in World War I. It worked to create a positive picture of the war to win over the American public. The committee used all aspects of the media to portray their message. By keeping the view of the war positive, the government would keep the country producing war goods and help support their troops. War bonds. The U.S. started to issue war bonds in 1917 and 1918. The bonds were used to fund the war. Because war is very expensive, the U.S. government would ask its citizens to give them money. Espionage Act. The Espionage Act was a law created in 1917 that made a procedure for finding and imprisoning spies. It allowed the government to search and read mail. The government could arrest anyone who they believed was interfering with the draft. The act led to Schneck versus U.S., and the Supreme Court upheld its views on freedom of speech.